I got extra people. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 13th Community Development, Housing, and General Government meeting. We do have a short agenda, but I don't expect that to limit our conversations, and that's a good thing. So we got time today. We have one item on consent and two on the general, and would the clerk please call, well, anybody want consent?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second, the approval of the consent agenda. Let it be known by voting. And the motion passes. Thank you. If the clerk will call the first general agenda item, please.
Item G1, information on city investments in affordable housing development for the period ending December 31st, 2022.
Thank you. And that will be Ms. Marla Newman coming up. How you doing, Ms. Newman?
Doing great. How about you?
All right.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, Vice Chair Scipio, members of the committee and members of the council. Marla Newman, Community Development Director. Before you is a housing production summary to kind of give an overview of the activities that have taken place as of the second quarter of 2022. So basically, the end of the calendar year 2022 and the second quarter of our current fiscal year. We'll start with the unit production status. Of course, we know that the challenge was made February 28th of last year that we would do 750 units a year. While we were building the structural and infrastructure plane of how we got there, we still to date have already committed, or you have as council, committed funding to 531 units.
Yay!
Yeah, so we've made some good progress in spite of the fact that we've needed to hire some staff and, like I said, get our infrastructure in place. You'll see what we've denoted as city-sponsored. Those are projects that will be taking place on city-owned land. So we call those city-sponsored. So we have a potential 10 sites in the pipeline. We have what we call a pipeline list of different properties that the city owns that we are identifying as ripe for development. As of this point, we had not issued RFPs by the end of the calendar year. We have, of course, since then issued two. We have selected a developer on one project, and we have one project in progress. So then we are looking at the total projects committed at the end of 2022, which is 13. In that last quarter of last year, you all committed funding for 193 units. And at that time, we had 81 units under construction, and those were the Choice Neighborhood units in Phase 1. Then we go on to show the investments and the affordability breakdown. So as of the end of the year, council had committed over $19 million towards projects. And those projects have brought $65 million of their own to the deal, which gives us roughly $3.50 of leverage for every dollar that the city has put in. We've broken down the affordability of those various projects, how they are targeting their units. And so you'll see the breakdown there. And I can pause here before going to page 2 if there are any questions.
Councilmember Scipio.
Ms. Newman, city-sponsored, you said, are projects on city land.
Yes, ma'am.
But we've given funding to, is that 193 that we've actually committed dollars to that might not be on city land, but on any project that we've given dollars to?
That's correct.
So do we know what is the addition of those projects?
Of the city-sponsored?
To, if we had to say total city-sponsored and committed, supported.
Right.
How many would that be if we had to add that in.
We don't have a number yet. That's why the, up here where it says RFPs issued is 0. We will get a sense of what those projects will be once we have requests for proposals out, developers respond back to us, and then ask us for contributions of land and/or gap money for those projects. So once we start getting our responses back, like I said, we have 2 RFPs now out on the street that we've done just the beginning of this year. We'll start to get a sense of how much that is, but then we would still need to come back to you for approval for those dollar amounts that those developers may be requesting. And then we would start to add it into that total number of 19 million that you saw.
Haven't we approved some dollars already for projects that are underway that may not be city land?
Right.
For GAP?
That's the 19,312,000.
But the actual projects aren't shown up in this top number anywhere in the blue area.
Maybe once I go down to the next page and see them. They're all broken down. The various projects that we've invested in, they're all on the second page.
Are they part of the 531?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Councilmember Clark, then Councilmember McIntosh.
Just real briefly, there may be some apartments being built, but if they're just market rate apartments, we didn't do anything with them other than maybe somebody issued a building permit. They're not part of this.
That's correct.
They're a different animal.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Councilmember McIntosh?
The unit production status, I'm assuming the 750, I guess I want to know what counts in that 750? What do we consider accomplished there? Is it certificate of occupancy has been issued or something has been committed?
So initially, what we're showing are the units that council has approved making an investment in. So that's why it's total to date committed. So those are your actual investments into those. Actual completion of projects, and there's a column for that on the next page, will be C of O, and that's when we'll consider them complete.
Right, so I think one thing that's important for us to keep in mind is the annual goal of 750 is 750 new occupiable units. And so that number, to me, I don't equate the 531 total to date committed. I think we're a long way away from the 750, a lot longer than that 531 number shows.
Right, yeah, the development horizon takes a while, but certainly to show at least what you have in the pipeline that should be coming on board over time. At least it keeps up with your approvals for projects that you're investing in.
And Councilmember McIntosh, once a project is completed, there will be another Pareto bar there that you'll be able to see that the project is completed, not just committed, it's completed. And then you're probably going to see 2, 3 numbers, the annual goal, the commitment, and then the ones that's completed.
What was the beginning date of, when was our commitment announced, the 750? What's our timeline?
I believe the mayor did that on February 28th, basically at the end of your housing workshop,
So we're about a year in.
just about a year in.
So by a year from now, we should be showing 1,500 completed units. That's the goal.
No.
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 I don't know about completed, but definitely committed.
Well, I thought the annual goal was for completed units.
750.
But I'm not comfortable standing here today to tell you that February of next year, you'll have 1,500 completed.
Right. I think where we're going is that the goal for the 750 was that immediate goal to see if we could get that done within a year or whatever. But the council has an opportunity to raise that number, just like a business. If we said 750 and we get it done, committed, then we move on to the next goal, because now we've got the money, the investment, and we finished it. Even though they're not completed, they're in there, they're done, they just,
My impression was that was an annual goal.
for right now, but again, just like a budget or a goal or a plan, we can tweak it and change it depending on, as we talk, as to how fast we can get these units built. Any other comments?
Just a point of clarification. Is our goal 750 units that the city would sponsor?
No.
Or was it 750 that we would work to get done across the city by
Participate in.
partic-
Participate in, meaning we invest in those.
Money, infrastructure,
Land, money or land.
or
Okay.
land.
Yeah,
Okay.
our participation in the projects.
That we have some participation to
Correct.
some degree in
Yes.
projects, okay.
Continue, Ms. Newman. You got a question, Councilman Clark?
They don't have to have city participation to be a winner for, so to speak, WINNER, winner. But they usually require city participation to help make the numbers work.
If they're going to be affordable, that's true.
Yeah, that's right. It would be very unusual for someone to build affordable housing with no city participation. I certainly hope they would, but I think realistically, they probably can't.
That's correct.
Continue, Ms. Newman.
So next, we have a map that shows where the different developments are that have had the commitment from council for investments. And you'll see they're kind of spread out around the community. And then below the map, you'll see each of the project names, and of course, there's a corresponding number for that project on the map. And we show what we have as, what we know to date, our total development cost, and how much the city has invested, roughly what it comes to or costs per unit for the city's investment, when you made that investment, which quarter of the fiscal year you made that investment, how many units is representing, where the developments are, the status of where they are, and then when the expected completion date is.
Councilman Scipio.
I have two questions. Why is Rams Point design in red?
Because they have a significant gap, and we have not been able to reach resolution yet on, A, how they will fill their significant gap, and making sure that the number of units that they initially committed to set aside as affordable are in fact affordable. And so this project has been on the books for over 3 years, and so anything that's not gotten to certificate of occupancy in 3 years, we show it in red.
It might be good to put some type of notation down there or put it, because I know the design's been complete, that maybe we need to identify why that, if this is a public document, so people will know that. My other question is, I think we might be missing units if we're just restricting this report to affordable, because Metropolitan Village isn't on this report, and I assume they're not there because we did not contribute to their plan.
That's correct.
Right.
But they are producing housing, and they're taking care of the affordability on parts of those units with their construction.
Part of what we have here also are the work that we have to necessarily monitor
Yeah.
and make sure things are happening per a contract with the city. So technically, while we might ask Metropolitan Village for information about their development, they don't have to give it to us because they're a private entity. So what we have here are those developments that, again, have that public investment, for which then we have some responsibility and obligation to monitor and report to you on how our investment is being deployed.
And I think it's important, again, as all of you know, we've been traveling this road now for a while. This information is to provide clarity to the council as well as the community of what taxpayers in the city is investing in. As Ms. Newman said, it can be 30 developers out there building, and they could probably have some units that they declare as affordable, but their affordable may not line up to what we think affordable in. It might be $1,500 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. And therefore, because we don't control their process. I don't feel like, and maybe you all do, I don't. I believe we stick with this. That's why I asked staff to create this way, because unless we all see what the investment is, the public, or where the tax money, the monies we've been given, whether it's ARPA, whether it's the state or anybody, that we can see where our tax dollars are, our money, and how we leverage that for affordability, that we can prove, we can document, verify, and it's there. Again, this is a living document that as we go forward, I'm sure we'll be tweaking it and improving it so that it can be understood by everybody and anyone when they look at it. But it gives you all a snapshot as to Councilmember McIntosh and we've been back and forth trying to get this to a point where you all can look at it. When you asked that you wanted to see the projects in the wards or the city where the actual locations, we added that. But again, this will be given to you once a quarter unless something happens that we feel like we now need to bring this back to you all so you can see that maybe a month ago or we're in the pipeline with a developer that wants to be a 500 units of affordability with our input or our land, then we'll bring it back like that so you guys can see it.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else, Ms. Newman?
No, ma'am.
I'll say this is very helpful. And I would offer one comment on that. And I think Metropolitan Village may be the exception to the rule. But that is probably going to be a development that's going to meet a lot of these 80% and 50% of AMI, whatever, we don't know. There probably aren't going to be many of those that are privately done. I'm not suggesting we put it on the list, but we might want to kind of keep that in our back pocket. Time to time, I'll have some built that meet workforce housing, but is that the 80%? Is that workforce? Maybe?
80 to 120.
80 to 120.
Yes.
Or 120, so
80 to 120.
that's not even on the graft. But I would just keep some of those in mind. At some point, we might want to not claim them as our success, but let the community know if they're looking at this holistically, that a few of the things, and there won't be many of them. You may see some in Boston Thurman, because I think Truist and Wake Forest are going to be putting some money in over there. I don't know that for a fact. But anyway, excellent. I like it. Just keep going.
Thank you.
And Councilmember McIntosh and Scipio, one more thing is that as Assistant City Manager King knows, that as soon as these companies or private developers do what they do with housing, we will know when there's the certificate of occupancy is issued that now people are moving in, actually. And we'll have those numbers, but right now, they put them in their plan, I'm sure, but we have no clue. And it's not like they're coming to discuss what they're going to do with us. So when planning gets the nod and they have to go and get those certificates of occupancy and everything else, we will know what they're doing, or if they come and they ask us to participate in some manner. But again, you got to realize when they come and ask, they know that there's going to be a ask on our part. And again, a lot of people are wanting to develop and do what they do. But Councilmember Clark, I am sure when Metropolitan Village starts to actually their turning ground, there'll be a lot of coverage for what they're doing and others in the city if it's actually housing that will affect the quality of life in a qualified census tract or anything else. Because the apartments that are being built over on Trade Street across from, what is it?
Fiddling Fish.
Yeah, those apartments, if you've been by there and looked at some of that's not affordable, but maybe somebody making that kind of money it is. But we're talking, they look like they belong in downtown DC or somewhere. So, Councilmember McIntosh.
Yeah, so to me, this list is the projects that would not happen were it not for our participation. I
Correct.
think we need to feel free and happy to be cheerleaders and congratulate and, maybe take a little credit, on the side for other projects that get done that support affordable housing. But to me, this list is just things that would not have happened were we not involved. And I appreciate the last two columns, the status and the projected completed dates. I'm not sure I have a whole lot of confidence in some of those projected completed dates. I think it's important for council at least to know what the reality of some of these numbers are. 531, and having been in the business, pipelines, things in the pipeline often go sideways and never get built. So keeping us as up to date as possible is much appreciated.
Councilmember Scipio and Councilmember Mundy.
Since workforce is 80%,
81 to 120.
81.
80 to 120.
To 120.
So on that little circle graph on the front, I was wondering if we could label workforce housing, but because that's a term that a lot of people are throwing around as affordable. But I guess we don't have any. Is that the first graph that has the circle
None of what we've invested in
is workforce?
noted here. No, ma'am, it's not. And the city does have a workforce housing policy, but none of these that we're investing in right now meet that definition.
No portion of them are?
Not these funds.
Okay.
Not to say that there couldn't be some later, but in these
And then
that are represented.
whenever we have later, we can start seeing that on the circle?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mundy.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm reading correctly. Funding quarter on the graph is when we approved funding.
Correct.
So if I wanted to go back and read about what we approved, that gives me an idea of the timing. Okay.
Yes.
And one other thing that might be helpful is to indicate where the money came from.
Okay.
Oh, where this opera?
If it's ARPA money or some other source.
Okay.
And what you can do, Ms. Newman, like we do sometimes, you can
Code.
put the alphabets of what that is, like home funds, North Carolina tax credits, whatever.
You code it
ARPA.
some way, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm studying. I'll try to figure out a way
yeah.
so that that's still legible, but it tells
Right.
the story that you're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Just real quickly, one last thing. As we move forward and we are signaling, we're choosing projects to back, we've talked about this, and I think we're all in agreement on this. We need to have shot clocks in there for when, so if a development doesn't occur, we take the money back.
Right.
Yeah, we have to do that now because over the years that I've been on this council, we will fund things and they never happen. And that money is sitting there when we can go do something else with it. And that's not to say that we won't support the project. But if we have others in the pipeline that are waiting for some type of funding and they're moving, let's move that money over there and let that happen and then tell those folks, take a number, get back in line. Thank you, Ms. Newman. Thank you, Ms. Tony. Thanks to your staff and everybody that worked on this. I can tell you the council is happy. Next item, clerk.
Item G2, information on Community Development Department reorganization.
Ms. Tony.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, members of the committee and council. Before you is an outline of a reorganization. We've gotten input from you all, from the community, from nonprofits around housing. As you all just mentioned, that the mayor and the council's #1 priority is affordable housing. And so this information item shows you that we are intentional about carving out a housing development department. And then the separate one will be Neighborhood Services Department, which I'll show you in one moment. So the Housing Development Department would focus just on the development of affordable housing. so that we can reach our 750 goal annually and really have dedicated staff to just focus in on that. That department at the lead would be Marla Newman, would be our housing czar. And these are all existing positions. I just wanted to mention that. So the existing senior administrative assistant would stay. Now, this land banking deputy director is new in structure. The person would be Sharon Richmond. She's currently the deputy director. As you've heard previously about School of Government doing research around land banking, and just making sure they focus in on areas that you all approve. Sharon, and I didn't realize this was actually her background. And so this may be something of interest, maybe not. But as we continue to look at potentially land banking, she would focus in on that. But if not, she would focus in on other areas around housing specifically. We also have an assistant housing development director and a housing development manager. Those two positions you all approved in the last fiscal year budget to support housing development. So those would remain in this department. Currently, Tanya Skillman is the person that has filled the housing development manager position. And we had someone temporarily, he stayed maybe for a week or so, but that position for assistant housing development director is currently vacant, and Marla is actively recruiting for that position. And then we're keeping the Choice Neighborhood projects manager in this department as well. That is Samuel Hunter. He's managing the CNI project, and so you saw that also on the housing dashboard. So that contributes to our housing production around affordable housing in the Choice Neighborhood Initiatives area. So that will be continued to be managed in this housing development department. So the second department would be everything else. This is the Neighborhood Services Department. So we've kind of carved out everything that's more programmatic in nature and looks at communities as an opportunity to develop neighborhoods, look at community services. So this particular department really has three components. So there'll be a neighborhood improvements area, lending rehab division, and then housing and community services. And when we say housing here, that's more programmatic and not housing development. And so the neighborhood improvements assistant director, currently that's vacant. It really doesn't exist in the structure that you see in your screen, but we do have a couple of vacant positions. There was a position, his name is Doug. We can move that, and then also Melon Parker's position, who recently retired. So the Neighborhood Services Director and the Neighborhood Improvements Assistant Director, those positions are available for that. That person would then oversee a neighborhood manager. That person actually exists, Florence Adams, and then she will oversee the Neighborhood Services Coordinator. And these are people who actually would be out in the community, empowering communities in some way, making sure they're aware of our services. They would support you all in community meetings and explaining kind of what's necessary in communities. The partner to that is code enforcement. You all know that's a large area. Brian Cheney, he's relatively new, but he's come in and done an amazing job and stepped up really to the plate underneath the leadership of Sharon. So he's really stepped up and will lead the code enforcement division going forward. It's 27 positions underneath that division. We also, the council adopted a rapid response team in the budget. All those positions remain vacant, but I believe that it makes sense for it to fall under the code enforcement division. However, the rapid response team could respond to, say, a mattress in the city's right-of-way or trash that's out. They could rapidly respond to those type of requests, which code enforcement is a little bit more policy-driven. And if it's private property, they have to follow a process, have to give the owner 14 days, those type of things. Whereas a rapid response team can just rapidly respond as long as it's within the legal framework in which to do so. Then you have your lending rehab division. Recently hired a lady named Katrina Kennedy. There are 5 field positions that currently exist in the rehab division. I will say this particular area has come with some issues. You know, there was quite a bit of turnover or vacancies. And so for that reason, there's been issues with the application. There's been some perceptions around rehab in the community, a lack of real progress of getting those resources out and monitored in a way. A lot of it is perception and community perception around rehab and what that looks like. So we will retain those 5 positions under Katrina Kennedy. We'll look at the existing cases, make sure that the contractors under the loans that we've provided are adequate and these homes are upfitted. There's a list they're behind on, so there's enough work for the existing team to work on. But we will stop applications effectively, really immediately, for rehab for the city in that way. What you see underneath that is a rehab program for Forsyth County. So we have resources that come in from HUD, a lot of resources around rehab. And so we are proposing to expand our interlocal agreement, which we already have one, with the county to do rehab work also in the city. This is, you know, Winston-Salem is in the city limits, and so they'll just be looking at countywide rehab versus in these rural areas only. So since we already have that agreement set up with the county, it's just a matter of us providing additional resources for them to actually work in the city. So they've had a good track record. They've done a great job, have very little complaints, and really can get the grants out. They function where they give the resources out as it is a forgivable loan is how they structure their program. So the intent is for to be owner occupied, for the owner or the residents. It can be investor as well, but to live in the resident, certain income, kind of like our program. It's just that typically at the end of that period, it's forgivable. And so they're not trying to draw interest. They're not trying to get repayment per se. And they have about 5 contractors already that they work with to get the work done. And then the last area is the Housing and Community Services. Sharika Floyd, so this will be kind of new for her. It's a few more positions underneath her than she probably expected, and we haven't talked to her about it yet. I think she's here, but she's done an amazing job in the homelessness space. So she oversees our continuum of care area, all things homelessness. So we see housing is more in the homelessness area and the programmatic space of that. And so we have 2 program coordinators and a program analyst, 2 of which have been with the department for many years, very smart and educated in that space. They do a lot of our community grant funding programs, and so when people apply through our community agency funding process, Wanda and Diane handle most of those contracts that deal with CDBG and some of the home and ESG type funding. So that's kind of what they do. And then you have your program analysts. All of that would make sense under the space of housing and community services under Sharika. So those are the 2 departments, Neighborhood Services Department and the Housing Development Department. Any questions?
Real quick.
Councilmember Clark, Scipio, Monday, McIntosh.
I'm on page 2, the Neighborhood Services Director. Do you have a person in mind for that, or is that currently vacant?
That is currently vacant, and so we will advertise that position to have it filled.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Otherwise, I like the idea.
Thank you.
Councilmember Scipio.
The rehab program with the county, if you move forward with this, how soon could residents apply? And would they be applying to the county now instead of the city? And then which of our rehab funds in our budget would be going to the county for use to serve our city folks?
Great questions. I've talked to Cal Haney, is there the person there at the county that's running that department. He just sent me an email. They are ready to go. They would need to add additional staff to ramp up to handle the load of the city. They are willing to take some of our existing applications if necessary, but they already have a program, so it literally would be just a matter of us advertising a phone number for rehab. It will just be a county staff person. We've done this in many other situations. We did it for ERAP, for example. It was a city and county supported effort. It's just be one number, and they won't know where the person sits per se, but at the end of the day, it's just like public health. They serve the entire county. They don't carve out city. They don't carve out Kernersville or Louisville. They serve the entire county. This would be an example of that. They could accept applications now because this is kind of what they do. It's just now they just need the resources to make sure they have the money once they get through the application and the person qualifies to pay for the actual forgivable loan.
And are some of our funds that we have actually would be going to support this?
Yes. So
And those are?
Yeah, so under this same rehab program, I didn't put, there are about 7 or 6 vacant positions, but there are also some funding that we have for rehab that is just sitting in our coffers. And so as they request resources, we already have this interlocal agreement with them, which is HUD dollars that they're serving the urban areas for. This would just expand what we already have. So, but we have the resources. There's nothing additional. And with the vacant positions, we will hold vacant, so that provides additional resources as well.
Councilmember Mundy.
Thank you, Patrice. If you go to the left there, the neighborhood improvements, what are those neighborhood improvements? That's kind of news to me. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah, so we've always had a neighborhood improvement kind of area. We've had some running vacancies. And so this neighborhood manager exists. I think a few years ago, I want to say Tabitha Childress might have been in it. So you're kind of familiar with some of the work that she's done, connecting with the neighborhood associations, just kind of being that person that's out there helping neighborhoods and neighborhood associations learn about city resources and what the city provides. The code enforcement director, division person needs somebody also to report to. And so that's why we're carving out this neighborhood improvement assistant director to be able to manage all of what code enforcement is, which is 27 positions. It looks small under here. It's a lot. And then this rapid response team, as well as the neighborhood services area, which has always existed.
So it's not the improvement's not necessarily like a qualified census tract. It's any neighborhood.
It's any neighborhood.
It's
in
just
the
not been
city.
active.
It's not been really that active.
Okay.
That's actually right.
And then a follow-up question on code enforcement. Are they organized any particular way by geography? I mean, 27 to me is a lot. So how do we make sure that they're where they need to be? Is it a
Data. and requests that come in, they get requests through CityLink, ideally. I mean, obviously, we get it from other sources as well, and they create a task list. And so some areas just have more tasks than others. And so they've done a great job of reassigning people as necessary to meet the needs and the demands. And so some areas have been kind of underserved, and we have, as you've probably seen, us do some enhanced code enforcement, is what we've called it. And they put additional staff in areas. And we actually had a contract with state and code enforcement to concentrate in certain areas that really need it more. Other areas of the community doesn't need it as much. So they make decisions kind of based on the data that comes in, based on the task list of the type of work that needs to be done.
And one final question, going straight down that line. Who will make the call if it goes to rapid response? Is that at the CityLink level?
No, that will be someone in code enforcement or the neighborhood improvements assistant director, and somewhere in that chain. There could be requests for it, so we would hear about it. It could come through CityLink. We would see the request, and then they would say, oh, that's appropriate for a rapid response.
Is that something that we could access if we see something in our own wards, in our own driving? There's a mattress, like you said, that's a good example, that we could access fairly quickly?
Well, the access piece is tricky, but you could definitely let us know, and then the director can send out someone.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember McIntosh, then Councilmember Larson.
How many net new positions are we talking about here?
0.
0. Okay. I'd be curious. I'd like to see the job description for the positions in the Housing Development Director's office. It seems like we're a little top-heavy there. 6 people in that group. I'd like to see job descriptions.
Councilmember Larson.
Let me get down in the weeds just a little bit. Where does a turn figure in this organizational chart, the turn program?
It'll be in this neighborhood services division, getting those resources out.
Beware, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
It's likely between housing community services, either under the program coordinators. It's likely where we would make sure the turn gets
And
out.
second of all, does graffiti fall under your responsibility at all? Under
Graffiti, yes. Code enforcement handles
code enforcement
graffiti.
and graffiti abatement? Is that
Yes.
part of your world?
Yep.
We got a big job there. How many people do we have working on graffiti abatement currently?
Well, I mean, we have about 27 positions, but all of them aren't qualified for graffiti removal. So, yeah, I think we need to work on, beefing that up so that we can respond to graffiti, because we know that is a growing issue.
Yeah, we're beginning to see it even on Salem Parkway again, which is very discouraging. Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember, you finished, Councilmember Clark?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Scipio.
He's loving it.
I did have one more question. The land,
You said Clark.
I'm sorry.
oh, he did say.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
The land banking deputy director, is that intended for someone to focus on our city-owned lots and how they get developed? Or is it to do something else around intentional land banking outside of our city-owned lots?
I think it's up in the air at this point, honestly, Councilmember Scipio. There's been research and there has been some intent around it. I don't know if you all have really given us formal approval to move forward around land banking. You all saw a presentation and funded actually a study from the School of Government, DFI, and they came and presented a little bit around land banking. which we have kind of sent back to modify a little bit before they come back before you. And then you all can say, this is something we definitely want to do and want us to do more research around. So it could be on some existing city-owned lots. As you know, there are communities and neighborhoods interested in this space. And so having a dedicated person that's more of an expert in it and helping shape what that looks like is the intent of this. But this position may evolve as we see fit.
Thank you and your staff for putting this together for me. Moving forward, I'm going to be asking all departments to present this to council, their departments, whether it's HR, organizational charts. As I've always stated, and some of the councils know, council members, when there's a change in the organization, if a person leaves, if they're added, if a position is vacant, the management side of the business, and this is management, we're supposed to get that chart, and that chart is to be done ASAP, whether it's online in a particular place for us to view, or the city manager sends it to us. I really believe, I know, the council really has no idea how many vacant positions we have. We hear the number from you all, but we don't know where they are. How is this affecting the services, the quality of services to the taxpayers? Just like Councilmember McIntosh, I think it's important that the council is able to see these job descriptions. I also agree with Councilmember McIntosh, we top heavy. In a business, you can't be top heavy and your people that need to do the work front line don't exist, because at that point, I could say, I don't need all of this. I just need people that's going to do the work. I think right now we're at a point in certain departments, but this department is worker-driven services for the people that need it the most. I don't know how we're going to get out of this. I personally don't think, and this is just my opinion, I know the workforce market is not that good right now. I don't understand why people come and go so quickly with the city and why we have all these vacancies. If we got all these vacancies and we've had them for a while, again, I don't even understand, to me, why we need them. We need to focus on ensuring whatever it is in our policies and procedures and for the city, and that's delivering the product to the citizens. As we already know, there are other things developing around this department that if we can't develop the services, I don't expect council to be the ones to decide that we see this and it needs to be done. I believe that's the other side of management. That's you all. And when council members have to weigh in on things that happen that's part of the day-to-day, then at that point then we're on a slippery slope. Again, I don't understand why we have so many vacant positions that we voted on in the budget. I'd like to see what is the plan, or what is it that we're doing to attract the resources, the talent to be able to do the job. Because there comes a point where we have to realize either it's going to happen or it's not. It's no different than the housing piece where we have monies allotted for things, but the developers can't use it because they're not ready. We need to make a decision, or somebody does. If we're going to do this housing, are we really effective at even doing that? Because right now, I'd say Houston, we got a problem. In a corporation, when you have cross-trained your management or workers to do more than one hammer, one type nail, I am hoping that these vacant positions that are becoming evident every day, the council is aware. People call us, email us, text us. We know what's going on. That we look at, are we really looking at our resources, and can they do more than one thing? To me, if you're in housing, why wouldn't you be over here in some of these other areas that we need you, like now? Circle the wagons. And I'm hoping that you guys are doing that. Because right now, the amount of complaints that we are getting is becoming overwhelming for us. I expect the city manager, the assistant city managers, you guys need to come up with something better than what we got right now. Because you're not the ones they're holding accountable. They're holding us accountable. Some of these positions that we voted on, Councilmember Clark, McIntosh, others, over the years, we see that we're trying to fix the problem. But that can't be the end-all, be-all. Now you got to come up with a plan B that's all hands on deck to still be able to deliver the product that we promised them that we would when they give us their tax dollars. I think in the management side, the upper management, we need to start moving people around. If they've been hammering the same nail forever and they can't do something over here that's almost comparable to what they've been doing, then that's a training issue as well with us. We're not training the workforce to be prepared to step in when needed. Councilmember Clark ran a manufacturing plant. I toured his facility. But his workers, all of them could step in and do things if this person wasn't there. And if the person went out on medical leave, if the person left for reasons unknown to us, I need us to fix this. And as chair of Community Development, Housing, General Government, I'm going to be working to help y'all fix it. Because we cannot continue down this track if we're going to build 750 units, if we're going to rehab housing. And as you've heard me say, and Councilmember Burke on the call, get out of the rehab business if we have nobody that can go out and monitor the work of these contractors that we have signed off on. And I'm just going to tell you all today, Councilmember Burke and I have been to some houses that we signed off on. That these people have signed off on loans for what, $50,000, $60,000? The quality of work that Councilmember Burke and I saw last week, and these things have been brought to us 2-3 years ago. The condition of the quality of work is unacceptable. I told the meeting, and I met with staff and the team, y'all better be glad it wasn't me, because you would be on the news, and everybody would know what's going on. But thanks to our neighborhood partners, NAACP, Neighbors for Better Neighborhoods, and some other organizations, the Ministers Conference, we are working to try to fix this problem. And I've asked Ms. Tony and staff, Councilmember Burke and I, what other houses that we signed off on that are in the pipeline, what other contractors have been getting complaints that we don't know about, that I'm sure we're going to be hearing about in the very near future. Again, we can no longer run this operation the way it is being run. And those people who sign those loans in good faith with us, to go in a house and see that 50-something thousand has been spent and there's $7,000 left in the balance, $7,000 won't fix none of that. Am I right, Councilmember Burke? So we got a little issue, Councilmember Clark. We got people that are mad at us right now. And I am looking for us to fix this. But again, we've met with staff. There's some safety issues that they've been given the marching orders from me, that I expect whatever it takes. I've met with the attorney contos and our attorneys and teams, that whatever it takes to get this fixed, we will fix it, and it will not be on the back of those elderly people who are living on fixed incomes to figure out how to get their homes back in compliant and livable. Am I right, Ms. Tony? Any comments?
Amen.
Any comments?
No, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, I think you are spot on. We are committed to ensuring that the people that we have given loans to, rehab loans, that we will go back. There are some people who don't have access to the Ministers' Conference or the NAACP. And so those people who don't have voices, we want to make sure that we intentionally go back and make sure that the construction that was done under the city's loan is up to par and habitable. What we're discovering is some of the jobs that some of these contractors did are not in compliance with even our minimum housing codes. And so we are going out, I'm going out with Councilmember Burke this Thursday to a house. And so Katrina Kennedy is one of the new rehab managers, and so she's also committed to making sure we go back and review these cases. And this is why we're stopping applications at this point, and then reviewing existing housing loans that we've already issued, just to make sure, first of all, to restore the city's name and credibility around this space, and that we are committed to making sure that people live in safe and decent housing conditions. So, so that's why we're separating out new house development, but we've got to work on our existing neighborhoods in our communities. So I'm in full support of these recommendations, and we're committed to making sure we move forward accordingly.
Another thing that Councilmember Larson brought out, the programs on the organizational chart or the information, and I know that this is a PowerPoint slide, and we can add as much as we want, and we can use our screens and make them bigger so we can understand it. Any programs like Turn and others that are in our, that we do, we need to show where those programs are going to be located. When it comes to those type programs, they got to have an owner. And it's got to be that we know where they are as council members, because I don't know about the rest, but these organizational charts allow you to be able to access, if you have a problem, you can call your assistant, but you can call the directors, you can call the city manager, you can call everybody when there is something that you have a question about, whether it's being done and where is it being housed, in what area and department, for clarity to the council as well as our citizens. And I think, a suggestion is, this needs to be on the website, the city's website, in a place where citizens can go look and say, okay, if it's continuum of care, and this person is the program coordinator, then you got this continuum of care / HMIS. And again, council, all of this is part of when we had the consultant to come in and try to help us with that. Because we have people in the community that don't feel like we're running that right either. So any programs that affect veterans, homeless, whatever, there needs to be the call out in the box under it as to what programs or projects, issues, initiatives are under it, along with the person or the department that's over it. Any comments or questions? Councilmember Scipio, Councilmember Larson, Councilmember Burke.
Going with the county for rehab, does that eliminate our loan committee to residents because they'll be applying through the county as opposed to going through our staff?
We'll have to work out some of those details, but right now, since we're going to stop applications to the city, we probably will not be issuing any new loans at this time. You know, if we can recalibrate in some way and get back up and going, it would make sense. There may be some use of the loan committee to review some information, but yes, that would eliminate the need for it.
And one of the things we suggested is that we basically operate like a bank or a lending institution, that residents have more control over their house, their contractor. Also, that, as Ms. Tony alluded to, there is a concern, and it's been a concern, is that if people don't have a level of understanding, when you have a senior citizen signing a contract for a loan for $50,000, $60,000, and they don't, we all are guilty. We don't read all that fine print for credit cards and other things. Some of us kind of already know how this goes, but there are a large amount of people that they just want to get their house fixed. So if you tell me you're going to give me $60,000, you're going to fix my bathroom, my plumbing, I'm just going to sign it. And the payment is okay. But at the end of the day, they need to understand, like what we have now is, well, what happens if the contractor's bad? What's my path to least resistance to get this right? Is the city going to walk hand in hand with me on this? We are going to work with legal aid and, again, community partners to help them understand the contracts that they're signing, whether it's the city or the county. But that's going to be one of the caveats in it. Councilmember Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Did I understand you correctly to say that TURN grant applications or loan applications are going to be now frozen again?
No, we have TURN money, and so actually, probably under this rehab division, I stand corrected, will likely continue.
They'll continue that?
Yes.
I have constituents that have waited years to try to clear through that.
Yes, I know.
And it's getting rather discouraging.
It is
On a whole separate matter, which maybe we don't need to go too deep in, on the Code Enforcement Division, came up in the last council meeting about commercial properties and whether we enforce code requirements, anybody inspect commercial properties. We've had to demolish a couple properties recently that have gotten so bad off that they've just reached beyond the pale. Do we have a program at all within your division at all dealing with inspection of, I know when buildings are built that they go through code enforcement and all of that, and the fire department inspects them periodically. But as far as other health and safety issues, do you have any programs at all? Do the city have any programs to look at commercial properties as far as health and safety and code requirements?
I know we have the authority. I don't believe we have any programs, and the city
RUCA's the
manager
only
wants to
thing I
chime
can
in
think of.
on that.
Yeah, let me qualify that a little. I've asked staff to work together to bring a report back to this committee after it came up at the meeting. First of all, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Adams and members of the City Council. We do have a non-residential building code that this council passed. Jerry, it's been a few years, right? It's a very minimum code for standards, somewhat similar to the housing code, but not as robust because we had more limits on what we could do. But it does allow us to do inspections on abandoned and dilapidated properties. That's separate from the fire department inspections that they do of occupied structures. But we're going to bring a report forward that shows you all the tools we have the tools we used the other day, which are the much more serious tools using the building and fire code, where there's a real serious immediate life safety issue, but as well as the non-residential code that we've attempted to use a few times already. I think we can do a better job at all that. So we're going to bring you a report shows you all three of those options and how we can move forward with it. Attorney Carmen is probably the most familiar with that code. She wrote it.
Councilmember Burke, then Councilmember Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I want to say I echo everything that you said regarding our seniors and the rehab process that they have gone through. We had a meeting over a year ago regarding the rehab process being incomplete for at least 2 of our seniors and some issues that they were having. And I thought this problem had been taken care of until I received a message maybe about a few weeks ago, and I decided I would go out to the homes and see for myself. And when I went last week, I was floored. I was totally disappointed that we had entered into rehab loan agreements with our seniors who trusted the city. They trusted us. They were just excited to have the opportunity to get their homes rehabbed, get work done that needed to be done. And one person told me that he already had a mortgage, and now he has an additional mortgage of $472. And when I walked through his home and I saw the incomplete work, I saw the unsafe condition that his home had been left in, I was just totally disappointed just to see the substandard living that we had put our seniors in. This is not the perception that we want the city to have. We want our customers to trust us. And so we have got to put ourselves in a position to be trusted. So I am so glad that Mayor Pro Tem and I were able to get on that call last week. I was so glad when she gave the marching orders to make these wrongs right. We can never, ever, ever subject our citizens to this kind of situation again. I'm glad that we're moving rehab to the county. Evidently, this is an area that we are it's way over our heads and we're not able to manage it. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark.
I can't comment on the residential side because none of this is in my ward, but I have owned a number of buildings in my lifetime, and they are inspected annually by the fire department. And I think that's something we might be able to tie into because they're not just coming through and looking to see if we're playing with matches. They're looking at unsafe working conditions. They always got me on you're not supposed to use extension cords. We'd always put a few out just so give them something to find, but you're supposed to use the ones that have the circuit fuse on them and
Protector.
all that type of stuff. Anyway, but I certainly think there's something already in place that we might be able to build on. And I believe, Mr. Garrity, didn't we add an inspector or two to the fire department the last 3 or 4 years?
We did. We added more so they could do more of those inspections. Again, they do not do abandoned, dilapidated structures. They won't go in those. So, like the ones we just dealt with on Liberty Street, those would have not been inspected by the fire department.
Anyway, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Councilmember Mundy.
Gosh, at the risk of opening up a Pandora's box, I'm not familiar with the rehab program. Was the work done by a vetted construction company? So how do we get compensated by that?
I already done crossed that bridge. Don't worry about that.
So,
Go ahead.
somebody should have, we should be protected, they should be bonded, and so we're going down that path. Not that we're likely to get anything back from it, but we want to make sure that we don't use them again, for one thing.
Yes.
Well, as I've communicated to staff, if we are contracting anyone for anything, and nobody is inspecting the quality of the work, then again, you know, we have to fess up. Like I told them, we broke right now. We're broken, y'all. Again, if you had an opportunity to see what Councilmember Burke and I saw,
And those contractors figured that out. They figured out that no one was inspecting their work.
you know it. So we're going to move on from here. We're going to do better, be better. And as Ms. Tony knows, I have asked and communicated Mr. Garrity and the legal team and everybody else involved in this. These houses are not to be thought that, okay, we're going to take 3, 4, 5 months to get them done. ASAP, immediately. And if it means we've talked with the attorney's office, if we got to file risk management claims or whatever, when we get in situations where things happen that were not in the budget, we don't have the money, that's why we have it. But we have got to make these people whole. We've got to give them their homes back to a state that is livable. I'm talking about electric, plumbing, heating, restrooms, flooring, ceilings. It's beyond me.
Yes, yes.
If all hearts and minds, any more questions? Councilmember Larson.
Yeah, we had, somebody maybe can answer this. We had an agreement at one time with Piedmont Triad Regional Council to do 12 houses, to rehab those. Whatever happened to that project? Did those houses get rehabbed? And has anybody inspected them? And is that a partnership that's worth pursuing for other projects?
No, sir. They haven't completed any of them yet.
Have not.
No, sir. We're in constant contact with them
And
to move the project along.
Is it not having contractors? Is it access to the buildings?
It's their process and trying to take on, I think, more than they could probably handle.
Okay.
I think they were well-intentioned, but I don't think they had the capacity to move our projects along as rapidly as we had expected. Because the houses were vacant, we thought they would be very easy to get in and do and get out, and that has not been the case at all.
Not been the case.
So we wouldn't be pursuing any more after these.
So I know that we have limited capacity with our building inspectors and contractors that we're currently using. Are we having problems within the trades right now to get the work done by competent contractors?
We have a few contractors that we can work with, and I know a couple of the contractors that we work with, PTRC works with as well, as does the county. There's not as wide a pool as there had been before COVID, so we've lost a lot of capacity in the general community to do this work. So we're all kind of competing for a small group of contractors.
If that was a bottleneck, if you're finding the actual contractors to do the work that are quality work, obviously we've got some problems with quality as well.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the issue. A much smaller pool to choose from than we had a few years ago.
And I've asked Ms. Newman, Ms. Tony, to look at, just like we have builders to get these 4 houses possibly, I hope it's no more, done, is that we put them all together in a package for contractors to bid on. And maybe, you know how contractors, you guys know, they do a development, a house, they move on to the next one. There are teams of carpenters, plumbers. We're going to have to bundle this deal if we're going to get this done. And I also want you to understand, and I'm sure more information will be coming to council. Mr. Garrity, we may have to go into closed session to discuss how we're going to get this done. But the cost is something to me that we don't even need to be worried about right now. The worry is fixing the product, and not 6 months from now, not 3 months from now. And we may end up having to pay a contractor premium money more to get this done because of the way the market is on contractors, building, and whatever. we can't use that or allow it to be an excuse for us not to get these people's houses back to them. Also, Ms. Tony, Ms. Newman, you've probably gotten a couple of emails since we've been in this meeting that we need to make sure, again, that we're communicating with those homeowners so at least they know where we are now. We told them, we promised them, and the organizations we're working with, that we will keep them communicated as to what's going on, so they just think we're just not doing anything, okay? Councilmember Clark?
No, I'm
Okay, all hearts and minds, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.